When we think about Kate Middleton, we usually picture a beautiful princess living a perfect fairy tale life, full of castles, crowns, and happy endings. But what almost nobody talks about is all the really tough, painful stuff her mom and dad had to go through for years and years to help her reach that spot. So buckle up, because I'm going to tell you a super sad, true story about how the ladder that leads to royalty actually gets built. Spoiler alert right now. It's messy, it's hard, and it's definitely not pretty or magical at all. Way before Kate Middleton ever walked through huge palace doors, way before bright camera flashes followed her everywhere, way before she got fancy royal titles like Duchess or Princess, way before she learned how to smile perfectly for the whole world. Even when she felt tired, there were just two completely ordinary people, her mom and dad, quietly working day after day to make a normal, happy family life. A life that later got pulled apart and stared at by millions of strangers. Carol and Michael Middleton didn't grow up with silver spoons, royal blood, bodyguards, or any special shields. They came from plain hard work, boring but steady daily routines, and very modest, simple beginnings that forced them to push and try every single day just to keep going. That humble, hard-working start really matters a lot, because it's the reason behind every single thing that happened later, including all the heartbreak and tears nobody saw. Carol Goldsmith, that was her name before marriage, grew up in a regular working-class house in a busy part of London. Her dad worked long hours as a builder, fixing houses and making things with his hands. Her mom picked up different part-time jobs, whatever she could find, to help pay the bills and keep food on the table for everyone. There was zero money handed down from rich grandparents, no emergency savings safety net waiting, and no important friends or family names to open doors for them. What they did have was a strong fire of ambition inside and a clear understanding that real security doesn't just appear. You have to build it yourself slowly, one careful choice and one hard day at a time. That tough, do-it-yourself attitude got planted deep in Carol when she was still a little girl, and years later it pushed and guided almost every big decision she made as a grown-up woman. On the outside, Michael Middleton's childhood looked a tiny bit more comfortable and steady than Carol's. But don't believe the tabloid stories that tried to paint it like he was secretly super posh. His family did have some loose connections to old British business circles and a very distant, far-back link to minor aristocratic names from long ago. But day-to-day life was still completely normal, full of regular jobs, family rules to follow, and clear expectations about working hard. Michael grew up, studied, worked, and lived inside normal limits just like most people. He wasn't raised surrounded by luxury mansions, private jets, or endless money. He was raised with the strong idea that keeping life stable and safe was the most important thing you could do. Carol and Michael first met each other because they both had jobs at British Airways, the big airline. They worked in different parts of aviation, but both roles needed serious discipline. Super long hours on strange schedules, and always being reliable no matter what. Their love story didn't start with dramatic movie moments or fancy dinners. It grew slowly in the middle of busy work rosters, early mornings, late nights, and shared responsibility. When they finally got married in 1980, they weren't dreaming about climbing into high society or chasing glamorous titles. They were simply two people building a sensible, practical life together, based on steady jobs, paying bills on time, and making small improvements little by little. During those first few years after the wedding, they were extremely careful with every penny they earned. They never spent more than they made, and they saved whatever tiny bits they could squeeze out. After their first baby girl, Catherine, that's Kate, was born, Carol decided to leave her job so she could stay home and take care of the new little one. While she was planning fun children's birthday parties for Kate and her friends, she quickly noticed a big problem. There weren't enough good party supplies available, ordering things was slow and annoying, and busy parents had no easy way to get everything they needed in one place. That light bulb moment wasn't some dreamy, romantic idea. It was pure practical thinking. This is annoying and there should be a better way. And that tiny detail is super important because the whole company called Party Pieces was born from solving an everyday hassle, not from wanting to get rich quick or live fancy. In 1987, Carol started Party Pieces right from the kitchen table in their home. It was a small mail-order business. She would take phone orders or letters, pack up party stuff, and send it through the post. She built it very slowly and carefully, with zero big investors, zero loans from banks, and zero splashy newspaper headlines. A few years later, Michael decided to leave his safe British Airways job and join her full-time to help the little company grow bigger and reach more customers. That was a scary, risky jump. Giving up a guaranteed paycheck for something that could fail meant the whole family's future now depended on making the business work perfectly. For quite a few years, their gamble paid off nicely. Party Pieces grew slowly but steadily all through the 1990s and into the early 2000s. They kept adding more colorful products to their catalog, made shipping faster and better, and eventually had to move into bigger warehouses because so many orders were coming in. During school holidays and busy party seasons, their three kids, Kate, Pippa, and James, helped out in sweet, informal ways, taping boxes shut, sticking on labels, stuffing envelopes when things got crazy. The money the business made paid for important things like good private schools for the children and later their university tuition fees so they could study whatever they wanted. This is exactly where most newspaper stories and online gossip start twisting the real truth. The Middletons never bought their way into fancy elite circles using old inherited family money sitting in a bank. Every single pound they spent on better schools, nice uniforms, books, trips, and college came directly from the hard work and sales of their own company. Later on, when critics wanted to be mean, they skipped that part and just slapped the lazy word privilege on the family instead of telling the full story of years of effort. By the time Kate first met Prince William at university in St. Andrews in Scotland, Party Pieces was doing really well, making solid profits and feeling quite stable and safe. The Middletons had reached a comfortable level of money where life felt easier, but they were still not untouchable or super rich in a protected way. Almost all their money was tied up in that one single business they built together. They didn't have it spread safely across big houses, land, stock investments, or family trusts that could protect them if trouble came. That one big connection to just one company would later turn into a dangerous weak point. As soon as Kate and William's romance became huge public news, Carol and Michael got sucked into a bright, noisy royal world they had never asked for or wanted. Newspaper reporters and photographers suddenly wanted pictures and stories about them too. Their little party business got examined under a microscope. Reporters dug deep into their past looking for anything interesting. Complete strangers started arguing in public about whether the Middletons belonged in royal circles or not. For the very first time in their lives, almost every personal choice they made stopped being private and became everyone else's business. Carol, especially, became the main target for gossip and blame. Tabloids and TV shows flipped back and forth between calling her super ambitious, controlling like a bossy mom, sneaky and strategic, or cold and calculating. Not one of those nasty labels ever came with real proof or evidence. They were just easy stories people slapped onto a hardworking mom who had built a successful company from nothing and simply wanted a safe, good future for her three children. But once that harsh picture of Carol stuck in people's minds, it never really faded away completely. Michael tried to stay much quieter and farther from the cameras. He didn't like attention at all, but the constant pressure still got to him deeply. Here was a man who always loved calm privacy, predictable routines, and keeping things simple. Now living right next door to one of the most watched families on earth. A family whose whole job is being seen, being symbolic, and looking perfect all the time. The Middletons were suddenly expected to behave flawlessly in every situation, But nobody ever handed them a rule book or guide on how to do it right. Even with all that pressure, the family did everything they could to keep life feeling normal for as long as possible. They turned down big-money media interviews. They refused to sell behind-the-scenes stories or access to their home. They never traded private family moments for cash or fame. Sadly, later on when things got harder, most people conveniently forgot how much they had tried to stay respectful and low-key. This chapter of their life isn't tragic only because they lost money or position. It's tragic because everything they had carefully built was so fragile underneath. Their whole success depended on constant forward movement, staying quiet and private, and keeping perfect balance between work and family. None of those things survive easily when thousands of cameras and critics shine bright spotlights on you 24/7. The exact same strong work ethic that lifted them up also left almost no room for making even tiny mistakes in public without huge consequences. By the time Kate walked down the aisle and married Prince William in 2011, becoming part of the official royal family, her parents were no longer seen as just hard-working business owners. In the eyes of the world, they had turned into living symbols that everyone watched and judged constantly. Expectations followed them everywhere they went, like invisible shadows. Whenever they did something well, people questioned if it was fair. Whenever they slipped even a little, the mistake got blown up into huge drama. The peaceful safety of being unknown, regular people had disappeared forever. What used to be a sweet, simple family story about working hard, taking smart chances, and slowly moving up in life was now frozen under constant bright lights, waiting for the next big stress to come along and crack open every tiny weak spot. And believe me, that heavy stress was definitely on its way. By the time the whole world turned upside down, the Middletons were already quietly carrying a huge load of pressure and responsibility they never signed up for. Party Pieces wasn't just their family's little mail-order company anymore. Because of Kate, it had become a public symbol tied forever to the future Queen of England. That new royal connection completely changed how every success and every small mistake got seen and talked about. Ordinary business risks that used to be normal suddenly carried extra reputational danger and shame for the whole family. For a very long time, Party Pieces worked because it followed a predictable, comfortable, yearly rhythm. Holiday seasons brought big orders, kids' birthday parties happened all year, schools ordered supplies, people planned weddings, anniversaries, and baby showers. The business model stayed strong because people never stopped gathering, celebrating, and throwing events. Customers ordered supplies weeks ahead. Stock in the warehouse moved quickly and steadily. Everything ran on a smooth, reliable beat. But even though it looked solid, that rhythm was actually quite breakable. As more and more shopping moved to huge online websites, tough new competition arrived fast. Giant platforms could sell the same balloons, banners, and party hats much cheaper. Busy parents started choosing fast, one-click convenience over carefully picked special items. Party Pieces tried hard to keep up. They slowly added fresh new product lines, improved their website, made shipping quicker. But deep down, the main way they made money stayed very vulnerable. It still needed real-life parties, real gatherings, and real events to keep happening without long breaks. Then in 2020, the terrible pandemic crashed into the world like a storm. Within only a few weeks, everything stopped cold. Birthday parties got canceled left and right. Schools shut their doors for months. Weddings got postponed or tiny. All the happy gatherings that fed Party Pieces suddenly disappeared almost overnight. This wasn't a slow, gentle slide downhill. It was a sharp, shocking stop, like someone pulled the plug. Orders vanished. Colorful boxes of party supplies sat untouched in the warehouse, collecting dust. But the fixed bills never stopped. Rent for the buildings, electricity, insurance, loans. Warehouse fees kept charging every month. Staff still needed their salaries even with no work coming in. Suppliers kept sending invoices expecting to be paid. For a cheerful company whose whole life was about celebrations and joy, suddenly there was nothing left to celebrate and no obvious quick way to bounce back. During this awful time, Carol Middleton quietly stepped back from handling the day-to-day running of the business. People close to the family said she did it to spend more time on family needs, and because she was dealing with some personal health worries too. Other team members inside the company took over leadership, but honestly, the timing could not have been worse. Party Pieces desperately needed fast, smart, big changes and restructuring right then, but nobody had planned or prepared for a disaster like this. Instead, the company went straight into pure survival mode, just trying to stay alive. At first, the losses piled up quietly behind closed doors. They stretched credit lines as far as they could. They asked suppliers to wait longer for payment. Everyone kept hoping and praying for a strong rebound once lockdowns ended and parties came back. But that big comeback never fully arrived the way they dreamed. By the time restrictions finally lifted and life tried to return to normal, the way people celebrated had changed forever in permanent ways. Huge blowout parties got replaced by much smaller, simpler get-togethers at home. Families had less spare money because of job worries and rising prices. Inflation made everything cost more. Party Pieces fought hard to recover. They changed their stock, focused on cheaper items, looked everywhere for new investors to bring in cash. But nothing they tried was enough to turn the ship around. The same bigger size that once helped them make good profits now worked against them like an anchor. All those extra overhead costs, bigger warehouses, more staff, more equipment, became crushing weights when sales stayed low. What once felt manageable and normal now felt impossible to carry. In early 2023, Party Pieces officially went into administration. That's the British word for when a company can't pay its debts anymore, and outside experts step in to try to sort it or sell it off. The cold numbers told a very harsh story. The debts had grown bigger than £2.5 million. The people and companies they owed money to included some huge national names and also tiny, small, independent suppliers who really needed that cash. One of the saddest and most talked about details was that one of the creditors was a hard-working family business run by Afghan refugees who had supplied party goods and were left waiting for payment they never got. That heartbreaking little fact spread like wildfire across newspapers and social media, and it made a lot of people very angry at the Middletons. Suddenly, the family got accused of hiding behind their royal connection, while letting hard-working small suppliers take the loss. There was never any real proof that Carol or Michael hid money, moved assets, or did anything dishonest or illegal. Still, what people felt and believed became much louder and stronger than the actual facts. The whole story flipped fast from, "This family had terrible bad luck," to, "They must be morally bad people who don't pay their bills." Carol and Michael couldn't escape the painful judgment. They had to live through the deep humiliation of watching decades of their blood, sweat, and dreams reduced to screaming headlines about collapse, failure, and huge debts. The proud identity they had built as smart, honest business owners got almost completely erased in public. Complete strangers started questioning their personal honesty and character right out loud. For Carol especially, the emotional pain was crushing and deep. Party Pieces wasn't just a job or a company to her. It was her own baby. She had dreamed it up, named it, grown it from nothing. It had grown up side by side with her own children. Having to watch it fall apart so publicly, while feeling like her hands were tied and she couldn't even defend herself properly, left her feeling completely powerless. And friends and family close to her could clearly see how much it hurt her inside. Michael felt the strain in his own quiet way. He had always been the kind of man who loved clear structure, predictable days, and calm control. The total chaos of administration meetings, court papers, angry creditors, and non-stop media guessing cut him very deeply. Every single attempt the family made to keep even a tiny bit of privacy got destroyed because the company name was forever glued to the royal family now. In the end, party pieces had to be sold off to try to pay some of the debts. It went for only a tiny fraction of what the company had once been worth at its best. What was left after the sale wasn't peaceful closure or a fresh start. It was just more loss and emptiness. Suppliers had to write off big chunks of money they were owed. Longtime employees lost their jobs and security. The Middleton family completely lost control of the business they had poured their lives into. Any dreams or quiet plans they might have had for starting something new got silently dropped. Not because they ran out of good ideas, but because the price of being visible in public had become far too high and too painful. Any new little project they tried would instantly get judged, picked apart, and criticized through the same harsh royal-connected lens. So, instead of fighting to start again, Carol and Michael chose to step back and disappear from the spotlight as much as possible. What made this whole collapse feel extra heartbreaking was the cruel timing. Right while all this was happening, their daughter Kate was already carrying her own enormous pressures and stresses inside the royal family, things the public only saw small pieces of. Her parents' very public business troubles added another heavy layer of sadness and worry she wasn't allowed to talk about or show openly. Any real support or comfort she gave them had to stay completely private and hidden. They all had to keep a careful distance in public so no one could twist it into more drama. Because of everything, the Middletons pulled even farther away from normal public life. They appeared at fewer events. They gave almost no statements or interviews. Staying completely silent became the only safe shield they had left. But of course, some mean critics quickly twisted that silence into proof that they were guilty or ashamed, instead of seeing it as quiet dignity. The real tragedy in this second half of the story isn't only about losing a business or money. It's about getting painfully exposed and stripped bare in front of everyone. A hard-working company that failed because of a once-in-a-century global disaster got turned into a juicy morality tale for people who love pointing fingers and assigning blame. Carol and Michael stopped being seen as real people with feelings. They became cautionary figures, like characters in a warning story. None of this happened because they were greedy, flashy, or living beyond their means. It happened because of terrible timing, depending too much on one single income source, and being emotionally and financially vulnerable when the world changed overnight. Their comfortable life was built on one main pillar. When that pillar cracked and fell, almost everything else came crashing down with it. By the time this painful chapter finally started to close, Carol and Michael were no longer simply the parents of the future queen. They had become a family forever marked by deep loss, quiet retreat, and the hard lesson that success without strong protective walls offers zero safety when the whole ground suddenly shifts underneath you. And even after the business was gone, the harsh spotlight refused to turn off. The collapse of party pieces didn't end neatly with final balance sheets, court papers, or official sale announcements. It followed Carol and Michael all the way back to their own front door in their quiet village. What should have stayed a private family heartbreak turned into a loud, ongoing public spectacle, and the damage spread far beyond bank accounts. It reached deep into their social life, their mental peace, and their most personal feelings. As soon as the administration news broke wide open, attention zoomed away from boring company numbers and straight on to the actual people, Carol and Michael themselves. Headlines got sharper and meaner. TV commentators and online posts lost any softness or understanding. Social media turned into a storm of angry accusations. The Middletons were no longer treated like normal business owners who got hit by an impossible worldwide crisis. Instead, they got painted as perfect examples of too much ambition, riding on royal coattails, and acting entitled. Even though no solid evidence ever backed up that nasty picture, the most painful wounds didn't come from big national newspapers or TV, they came from much closer to home, In the peaceful little village of Bucklebury, where Carol and Michael had lived quietly and politely for many years, anonymous handwritten or printed notices suddenly started appearing on lampposts and in public spots. These mean little posters directly attacked the family by name, accusing them of cheating people and not paying what they owed. The language felt very personal and cruel. It wasn't vague, complaining about a failed company. It named Carol and Michael specifically and made it feel like a personal attack from people they knew. For a family who had spent their whole lives deliberately avoiding attention and staying polite and private, this local shaming was like a knife twist in the heart. A real psychological breaking point. Their safe bubble of privacy got broken not by faraway paparazzi, but by neighbors and people they saw every day at the shop or post office. Familiar streets and local shops suddenly felt uncomfortable and tense. Simple everyday errands like buying milk or posting a letter carried extra stress and worry. The basic trust they once had in their own small community slowly eroded away. Carol Middleton, who had spent 40 years being careful, discreet, and never flashy, found this local judgment phase especially distressing and upsetting, according to people who know her well. She had already accepted that the business failed and money was lost. What really cut deep into her soul was the moral attack. The idea that strangers now believed her intentions were selfish or bad. She had created party pieces from scratch to give her family stability, safety, and a better future, not to show off or hurt anyone. Now the story people told about her was the complete opposite, and that hurt far worse than any financial number. Michael reacted in his own quieter, more inward way. He pulled back even further. Friends and family members described him becoming more and more reserved, seeing fewer people, skipping almost all social invitations, and avoiding any public place where he might be noticed or photographed. This wasn't some clever public relations strategy to look mysterious. It was pure self-protection, a man trying to shield what little peace he had left. Meanwhile, the bigger media stories kept growing louder and wilder. Some commentators openly asked whether the Middletons had secretly used their royal family connection in improper or unfair ways to help the business.